Buongiorno Mondo, and welcome back to 15 with Fosca, the podcast. I am delighted to have today with me as my special guest, Donna Scharnagl, who is a fellow U.S. expat in Italy and also my marketing and social media manager. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. So this is sort of an atypical podcast episode because I usually send Donna knows, I usually send my questions in advance to my guests. Even if we go off script, they still have a basic idea of what I'm going to ask them. But I didn't send anything to Donna in advance because we decided last week during a work meeting that we didn't need anything scripted. So Donna, it's up to you today. So I feel like pieces of our story are going to come out through the conversation. But what I realized last week when we were having this work meeting is that I really don't know your story. And so I said, stop, don't tell me anything. Save it for next week. So my first question is, tell me your story.
So my story goes back to college. I've been here a while. I was in college, and it was one New Year's Eve. A girlfriend and I went out to eat with a guy that lived in our apartment building, and he felt really bad because we were both sick and we weren't going to go out. So he said, I'll take you out. And he took us out on Miami Beach to a restaurant called Milan, which to me meant absolutely nothing at the time. But during the course of the dinner, we did the early, so we were toasting New Year's at 8:30, a little fantozzi there. And we toasted, and each one of us was supposed to say our dream for the new year. And my girlfriend was like flight lessons, and I honestly can't remember what his was, but mine was to travel Europe.
Huh.
And I mean, I had always wanted to travel Europe. I'm very curious. I had no place I wanted to travel in Europe. I just wanted to travel the old world. I loved history. I loved reading the stories about it. So I just wanted to see what it was. And, Americans have this fantasy with living the old world, old country kind of thing. And during the course of the dinner, this guy looks at me, and you have to remember, we knew each other just like weeks. It wasn't like we really knew each other. He looked at me and said, so do you speak any other languages? And I'm thinking, 8 years of school in Spanish, that's something and I said, yeah, sure. And he says, what do you speak? I said, Spanish. And he says, I think I have a job for you. I mean, just like that, cold turkey was, I think I have a job for you. Huh. He says, we'll talk about it. And it turned out that he worked for traveling shows. And he needed a speaker to go in for a show to speak in Italian and English. No, I'm sorry, Spanish and English.
Okay.
In Spain.
Okay.
In Palafox. And I was excited, didn't know what the heck it would mean for me, but it was exciting, the whole idea. All of a sudden I had to get a passport and all that stuff. And then April, he calls and says, sorry, they decided to go with a local guy. And, it wasn't real until you're on the plane. It's not real kind of thing. So I was like, oh, okay, no problem. Then I left in May, like a week before the departure. He called and he said, if you can be at a 12 o'clock appointment tomorrow, you just might get the job. So I show up, I knock on the door. Now, I had just finished college. I was going back for my master's.
Okay.
So I was 26 at the time. And I knock on the door, and the lady opens it up, and she looks at me. She says, you're my 12 o'clock. And I said, yes. She hasn't even let me in the door yet. And she says, you're a lot older than what we like. And I was 26. I'm thinking, oh my gosh.
Can we just say that this was, I don't want to age you, but this was a few years back. And you can't say stuff like that anymore. But just so people out there know.
You couldn't say it even then.
Yeah, but people did. But people did.
And she
now,
did.
Right. And she did.
So
my gosh.
I walked in, and it was already so surreal. I mean, the fact that I could get a job and then she didn't like my age, and I was like, I'm not even 30 yet, and 30's old, man. So
and you flew across, you were in Spain.
Well, no, I was.
Oh wait,
I was
you were still in Florida.
I was still in Florida. So
okay.
I'm talking to her, and she just looked at me. She didn't have a lot of questions. She said, so why do you want to go to Europe? And I'm not a typical person. I couldn't name 3 capitals in Europe if you wanted me to. There was nothing I wanted to see. I told her the truth. It's like, I want to meet the people. I want to know why they're like they are. I want to know what they think, what they believe, what their government's like. I mean, I want to know the people. She says, okay, you got a job. That was the extent of our interview.
So you were a little too old, but wisdom. See, the right answer.
So I said, okay, cool. And I said, and I speak Spanish too. And she says, oh, really? You speak Spanish?
Wasn't that a requisite for the job?
Obviously, I thought so, but it probably wasn't
that big a deal.
So I got on a plane. I mean, I closed up. I was in a monolocale with my girlfriend. I closed all my stuff up in boxes, put it in storage all in a week. I did not have a lot of time. I bought myself a travel backpack, a Let's Go budget book, and I was on a plane to Barcelona.
Wow.
And I get off the plane in Barcelona, and my first impression was all of these policemen walking around with machine guns attached to them. And I thought to myself, oh my God, the Third World War broke out while I'm flying over the freaking ocean. I can't believe this. And, that was my first cultural experience abroad. I mean, on this side, the state side, I go on into the islands, Mexico, South America, Canada. I've done all that. But it's not like going into Europe.
Yeah.
And then I had my first experience trying to speak Spanish, which, they should really help you more with these things in school. We had to make a collect call. I had no idea how to make a collect call in Spanish. Yeah. I mean, I was struggling, but and all the kids with me are 18-year-olds. So I really understood when she said you're a little older.
I got it. Okay.
So, so they're all looking at me like den mother. And I was like, don't look at me, man.
Yeah, I don't know what I signed up for.
But we did. We got to the place. It was an aquafun in Palafoz, which, to say how I got to Italy, Palafoz is sister city to Poppi, where I wound up living for 14 years in Italy.
Oh, so that's how you ended up where you are.
That's how I ended up in Italy. So it started on a New Year's Eve dinner.
I love that.
Where we making toast. And I thought it was kind of, here it was like a prophecy being fulfilled because we ate in Milano. In
Milan,
the restaurant
Milan, right.
So, and I can't even remember what we ate. I probably just ate something like spaghetti. For me, Italy was red and white checkered, candle on the table. Yeah. And I show up and I tell people, the story is, I was still before the euro when I came. So
me too, peso, Donna.
Yeah, there were pesos.
We're both old.
Lira.
There were lira. I bought my first house here in lira. There were so many zeros in that number.
Right? It's spaventoso. It was scary, right? So I saved up all my pesos. I didn't change my money.
That.
I know.
Saved up all my pesos.
I didn't have a lot of money. And even going to Italy was like the last minute, like coming to Spain, because one of the girls said, oh, I'm going to Italy, travel with me. And my idea was to go to English-speaking countries. I mean, really, Italy was not
on your radar.
At all. There's nothing. Not even like, oh, I want to go to Rome one day. No, it was not.
So you go with this random person to Italy.
Who promised me that she spoke English, Italian, and Spanish. And then when we got on the bus, she didn't speak any of them. And I couldn't even talk to her. And we're traveling, me with pesos, no food to my name, and a ticket that said Florence. Because tickets were sold in English.
Really?
So I was going to Florence. And then we pass Genoa, we pass Empoli, and she starts getting her bags ready. And she says, Donna, get your stuff ready. We're getting off the bus. And at this point, I was really I was pissed because I didn't have any food, because I didn't have any money to buy anything. And I couldn't change money. So I was 14 hours on a bus with nothing. She hadn't spoken to me the whole time. She was always talking to other people. And, I was starting to get annoyed. And I looked at her and I said, look, I've seen signs for Genoa. I've seen signs for Empoli. But I haven't seen one sign for Florence. I'm not getting off this bus until I see a sign for Florence. And, I think I caught the attention of the whole bus because there was, silence. And she looks at me and she says, Firenze is Florence. I was like, damn, that Let's Go book didn't tell me this. I was like, I know that. Grabbed my bag. We got off in Florence.
Right.
We did the 10-minute dash to a CETA bus that took me to Poppi. So another 2 hours on a bus where I didn't have any money.
Okay.
We get off.
You were hangry at this point. You poor thing.
Well, we get off the bus in Poppi. So if anybody who's been to Italy knows, we get off the bus at 8 o'clock at night. The streets are dead.
Oh, yeah. Poppi's not exactly
But anybody, because they're eating dinner at 8 o'clock at night, and nobody is out.
Wow.
And the streets are dead, except for a carload of boys on the corner. And me and this girl get off the bus,
Sorry if I'm laughing, but the carload of boys. It's like here you are in the middle of nowhere. Yet
there's a carload of boys. So we get off the bus, and the boys start pointing at me. And you can't tell it now, but I was a blonde. And
you're still a blonde.
Well,
a platinum blonde.
I've been told it's white. That was a 4-year-old, and I don't trust her.
Exactly.
So I was like, oh, see, now Let's Go Budget really did get something right because blondes do get attention. Well, here they had recognized me from the water park where I was working in Spain. They had seen videos of me doing a presentation of the dive show.
No.
And they're like pointing at me because they recognized me.
You were famous.
I know. I was like, cool. Autographs.
There was no social media. There was nothing back then.
No. We're talking 33 years ago. And no, there wasn't.
There was nothing.
And, when I look back on it now, and I think if my niece or a granddaughter ever did what I did at that time, I'd probably shoot them. But they came up and they said, oh, we saw you, we know you. And I'm trying to understand. Of course, they only speak Italian, and we're going back and forth. And with my Spanish, I'm trying to understand. Right. And then the name came out where I was staying. Because I had told this girl, I'll go with you to Italy, but you have to find me a place to stay. Because I have no money for that. Yeah. And she did. She found me a girl who said I could stay with her.
Oh.
I said, well, I'm going to Carla's house. Oh, Carla's, we'll take you to Carla. And this was my experience. This is my experience of Italy. This is what I think Italy is. What Popey taught me is like every town, every community is like your living room. Because everybody knows everybody. And they knew who she was, and they took me to her house, and everybody knew everybody there. I mean, afterwards, as I integrated myself into the society, you'd go to the disco, and if you wanted a ride home, my girlfriend would just say, you can take her home, but remember, I know your sister.
Exactly.
It's like, or I know where you live, kind of thing. There was always this sense of, I was never afraid of being out. People, even when I got to Florence, after living the 4 or 5 years in Popey, and then I came to Florence for a little bit and then went back, I was never afraid of meeting who knows what.
Right.
It was just...
But that was your first experience in Italy is very different from, I think, the average person.
Oh, definitely.
Because the average person, even 30 years ago, was going to Rome, Florence, Venice, whatever. Popey is really off the radar, even today.
And it's fantastic. It's a fantastic little town.
Yeah, we probably don't want to talk about it too much. We don't want to spoil too many secrets. But you always said that what interested you were the people.
Oh, yes.
The culture, understanding. And here you are. You've had this hellish journey. You're hungry. You're tired, right? Then all of a sudden, like a mirage, there's a carload of boys who know Carla
and knew me,
who knew you, right? And I assume then you stayed in Popey for how many years?
So my experience in Popey was very unique, and I think my experience in Popey really colored what I found to be the culture of Italy because I did it in Spain too. I really met the locals. I refused to eat at the restaurants, and I went out of my way to work with the staff and to eat with the staff and stay with. And I'm living with a family in Popey, and not just any family. I think that there are so many ways. I think that it was universally divine. Everything came together, and it wasn't just any family. It was like the mega social family of all of Popey. Everybody knew mother, father, and daughter in this. I mean, they were involved in everything and anything.
Wow.
So I show up in the living room, and you're right. I'm tired. I'm hungry, disoriented to the max. Yeah. And when you know it, Popey has a language school. So there were a few other Americans there. And I walk into the living room of the house that I'm going to be staying in, and there's an American in the living room talking to my hostess-to-be, the mother of Carla, who, by the way, wasn't even there. She offered me a place to stay, but she went to school in Rome. Which is like 4 hours away.
Well, that was nice of her, though. So her mom didn't get lonely. That's very Italian. Mom, I'm leaving. I'm going to college, but I'm going to bring an American.
She left me with mom, dad, her uncle, who came to live back in the house, and grandma.
Okay.
And then the 12-year-old niece,
Okay.
So I show up, and of course, this woman doesn't speak any Italian. And the guy is trying to translate, and he says, okay, she's telling me that if you don't speak Italian, you don't eat. And of course, like you said, I'm hungry.
Oh, no.
And I said, okay, teach me how to say I speak Italian. I speak Italian.
I'm so hungry.
So, I mean, it was an amazing experience. This family definitely countrified everything. I mean, I woke up the next morning with a lady knocking on the door because she was bringing milk that had been collected just that morning,
Wow.
door to door. I go up and with this cup of milk, and because she had to show me where they kept the cup in the hallway, and she filled it all up. And I go upstairs, and there's no one in the kitchen, which is, of course, the main room in the house. But I look out this window, and I'm looking at the most awesome scenery I've ever seen. And it's cloudy on the bottom, but I can see the mountains on the top. And you can hear the sheep bells going ding, ding, ding. And you're like, they're out there somewhere.
How beautiful, though.
It was. I was thrown into a real Italian family. It wasn't, like a family, like a modern family at all. The house was from the 1300s. In some aspects, it looked like it still was.
Yeah.
But they were very local. I mean, when they talked about the local problems, they were living them.
Yeah.
It wasn't. So Florence never really existed for me for a while. Siena, Florence, Pisa.
Arezzo?
No.
Not even.
No. Popi's too far up to be part of
So
Arezzo.
you were just there living your.
To me, Popi was all, like, when people talked about, Chianti with the vineyards, I'd look around Popi and I was like, no, vineyards, I don't know what part of Italy you guys are talking about, but it's not here, so it's not Italy. It's just not.
It was Italy for you. So you stayed there for 4 years. What did you do?
Well, I stayed there actually for a year and a half. No, I stayed there for a year. And my money was starting to run out. Yeah. And of course, every time I'd tell them, okay, I'm going to Germany now, they'd look at me like, why? What's in Germany? Who's going to take grandma to her doctor's appointment if you go to Germany? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? I had become immediately a part of the family. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'm not going to go away, but I need to make money. So I'm going to become, and this was another awesome experience, I'm going to become a tata.
Oh, you became a nanny?
I became a nanny, a tata. So here is another divine intervention, in my opinion. I go to Florence, I sign up, I get an interview with someone, and wouldn't you know, because we talk about Popi, but one of Popi's claims to fame is that it has a standing castle, completely visitable, from the 1200s, the late 1200s.
I've been. It's
Castello di Conti.
And it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Definitely, 100%.
Absolutely worth the trip.
Well, guess who my interview was with?
Castello
Conti.
Right.
So ancestors of the castle. And I was like, okay, this is like a divine sign. So I wound up spending a year with them.
Okay.
And then I was seeing someone and I got married and I moved back to Popi and I was with Popi 14 years total. And I loved it. Popi was home. It was definitely home.
This whole side of Donna that I have never, we've known each other for over a year now, and the story's only coming out now. So you were married?
Yes.
To an Italian?
Yes. Which is another story, but we won't go into that.
Was he in the car full of guys when you arrived?
No.
Sorry.
No, the car full of guys was unfortunately all about an average of 10 years younger than me.
Well,
Cute, but
exactly. So you really, 14 years is a long time.
It's a long time. It's a long time. I've long passed the number of years that I'm here in Italy that I was in the States. And I definitely have the feeling of, for a long time I had a feeling of foot in both countries, but now my weight is definitely on the Italian foot, and I enjoy going back into the States, but it's not home. Even when I was getting divorced, and someone would say, "Oh, you going home?" I was like, "I don't know if I'll stay in Popi or not." And they're like, "No, home, like the States." I was like, "Oh, I don't even think of the States as home." No, it's not. It's my country, but it's for a certain aspect. So is Italy my country. Right. So it was never a consideration on my part to. And my family have asked several times, even now. I was like, no, not even. Several people tell me, "Oh, I'm here now, but I'm going to retire back in the States." And I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. The retirement would be better here. Yeah. Just like, why would you do that? Mm-hmm. But each to his own. And I know my story is different after I really started meeting other people, because many people would meet me and say, "Oh, that's what I want to do. I want to go and live in Italy." And I look at them and I was like, "Have you been there?" And they're, "No." "Have you Do you speak Italian? No, neither did I though.
Right.
I keep looking at them and I keep thinking to myself, I didn't choose Italy.
It shows you.
It did.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and I didn't even choose Casentino.
Yeah.
And Casentino, for many will come back and tell you, Casentino is an area in Tuscany between Florence and Arezzo, and it's a horseshoe-shaped valley, so it's tough to get in from the north. You come up from the south, and there's the Arno River that starts in there, and it is a very mystical. It has traditionally been a very mystical valley.
Yeah.
It has the 3 different monasteries that make a triangle out of
so
it.
So beautiful up there. I love it. It's magical.
It was. And I fell in love with Casentino. And it was like Casentino had a pull on me.
Yeah.
And even after the divorce, I did come to live in Florence for a little while to get a little bit of separation going on there. But it was all the, moving, being someplace new, doing something new. So Florence was cool.
Right.
Though I did learn the hard way that Florence is also closed.
Yeah.
And if you're a foreigner, you're a foreigner.
Yeah.
And you don't really meet the Florentines.
It's very difficult. I think you were much more of a novelty. I know that's a terrible word to use, but
for several years,
you were really different, and I think you experience this Italy not only because of the moment in time,
very particular,
but
yes.
a very particular moment in time. Also, when I started having my first experiences in Italy, that Italy. It's hard to find. It still exists in the small towns, but I think your experience was really unusual.
Well, I'm very glad I did the small town before I did the big town.
Absolutely.
And I loved my experience in Florence. I mean, I was oblivious. A lot of people would tell me, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I was like, I was totally oblivious. To me, there were no barriers. Retrospect, I can say, yes, there were barriers, but I laugh at them.
Yeah.
In order to meet people, just people in general, because it didn't occur to me to meet Florentines or non-Florentines.
Sure.
I went to a gym, and I made friends there, and I was like, this was like, I had to put myself out a little, but I did, only to find out that all the friends I made, there wasn't one Florentine between them. And it was like, okay, this is true.
But I always say that's the beauty of Florence.
That there's no Florentines.
No, there are Florentines, but there are also people from all over the world and all over Italy. And it's an interesting place.
No, it is.
Because it draws a lot of really cool people.
Florence definitely filled a very large void that I had after, after the separation and the divorce and then all the legal things that were fun because I got divorced when you couldn't get divorced right away. When you had to do 3-year separation before you got the divorce.
It takes so long.
It was fun. And then I got divorced with the promise that, the separation won't change your permesso di soggiorno. Lie. If anyone's listening, lie. That's not true. It did. No. Yes. And the only thing that saved me there was I had 10 years residency.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
And
at that point, you had your residency.
And my own business.
And your own business. So let's pivot for a second. Because when we last left you, you were a nanny.
Yeah.
And now you're like, I own my own business. So what happened?
So when I one of the first jobs that I got working here when I came to Italy was the nanny, which was total cultural experience because, the States, we don't, maybe more up north, but definitely like in the Florida area, we don't. There's not this idea of, the staff and the higher ups and then the really higher ups. So I definitely cultural experience there. And then I went back into Poppi because I was getting married. And he found me a job with a friend as a cook in an agriturismo.
Oh.
Which all my Italian friends thought was just hilarious.
So funny, right? L'Americana.
Well,
cooking.
What are you cooking? But the lady that I stayed with was a very good cook, and she had shown me several recipes.
So you had your repertoire at that point.
And the thing that saved me is it was a German agriturismo.
Oh, okay.
So they could do that. But then I learned that, you know what Germans call a bad housewife?
No.
An American.
Really?
Yes, I thought that was hilarious. Americans are bad housewives, according to the Germans. So I couldn't let anyone know that I was American.
So you had to hide your identity.
Which was easy because Scharnagl was kind of easy to...
Exactly.
Except when they tried to talk to me in German. And so I learned a little bit about what it took to be in agritourism what an agritourism was, how it ran, the people that came in, what they were looking for, what they weren't. And this is really at the beginning of
agriturismo.
Yes,
they weren't
we're
like
talking
a big
over
thing.
30 years ago. So it was the original sense of.
Interesting.
And then when I got married, my ex thought it was a good idea for me to have a real job because, culturally speaking, a real job where you worked for someone.
Yeah.
Freelancing was not a real job.
Right.
You worked for someone, you got a paycheck was very important.
Job security.
It's
a big deal.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Not as much now, but definitely back then.
Yeah.
Yes. And he got me a job with a friend of his where I started learning computers. Didn't even know how to turn on a computer. That was not what I studied in school. Absolutely. So I went to start working for him, and the internet came. And while I was working with him, he became one of the first internet suppliers in this area.
Interesting.
So I was here with the growth of internet. I was like one of the first people sending emails home to my family. All of a sudden, from onion skin to emails,
Yeah.
Why is my family not getting email addresses? Everybody, hey, get a draft.
Wow. You were in the old country, right?
Yes. So
fun.
I worked there for several years, and then I always like working with people. And the thing working with the internet and computers, they kept me isolated in a room like this here, where I didn't get to go out, I didn't have contact, and that's not my personality.
Something that you missed.
Yeah. I mean, you probably can't tell, but
you like people.
So I got a possibility to return to the guy who had the agriturismo.
Okay.
Because he decided his went so well, he said, I'm going to open up a website and I'm going to sell everybody's agriturismo. He was one of the first vacation rental websites ever. And he was doing well. And he was doing it in Germany.
Okay.
So he wanted to open up in English and said, hey.
Why don't you come back?
Yes. And then there I could use not only the love I had of people, traveling, visiting Tuscany.
We can stop? No. So you're at the agriturismo. You're working on the internet.
Right. Now, he didn't have his agriturismo anymore. He was working for everybody else. So it actually gave me a chance to really use all the computer skills that I had picked up. And it put me on the fast track for marketing and sale and search engine optimizing and a little bit of social media. Because even then, social media wasn't a big deal.
This was when? Help me out. It was early 2000s?
Wow.
Because Facebook came about sort of in the early...
About 25, 26 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
So it was
almost 2000. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, makes sense. So we did a lot of work with Google. Search engine optimizing, but it was very easy then because there was no one else.
There wasn't that much out there. Yeah.
Exactly. And I can tell you, I've seen how things have changed over the 25. I mean, so many times I feel very obsolete. I mean, because it grows with a velocidad.
Yeah, I know it's too quick. But then it was slower. You're right. I mean, it couldn't have been it's been too much. If we talk about the fact that I just think even about 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
We were not slaves to our phones the way we are today.
Well,
come on.
Let's go back 10 years.
10 years for sure now.
Yeah.
But come on, Donna.
I don't think I ever had a cell phone until my sister came and stayed with me, which would be 2005, 2006. And I didn't realize how big the cell phone was in what I was doing until when I was listening to my nieces, 6 and 4 years old, playing, and they were imitating Aunt Donna. And it was, hello, Moto.
Oh, my God. No, because you had a flip phone.
I had a flip phone. This was when everyone had flip phones. And it was, hello, Moto.
I had the same one.
Yeah. And that was the way they identified Aunt Donna. I was like, oh my gosh, that's not what
that's not how I identify.
Well, I never did identify myself as a techie. But everyone does identify me
because you are.
Well, I'm definitely more tech than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which I think this is where my finding a job came in, because I'm definitely not a 9 to 5 kind of person.
Yeah.
And after I got out of working with the computer stuff and working with this gentleman.
Right.
And I became off the clock.
Okay.
So it was very tough that I went back to a 9 to 5.
So what happened then? So you're working with this guy, you're doing this, you're in a new, you sort of really reinvented yourself now a few times.
Yes.
And how long does that gig last? And what, what happens next?
So that gig lasted until my divorce.
Okay.
And then I go in Florence and I go into business with other people who had a travel agency, and we were going to do we were going to work that. I was going to grow part of it and they were going to grow part of it. And we had a great couple years, but then things happened.
All right.
And it just wasn't working together, and I stepped out. We all took a step back and we said, okay, this is close. But while it ran, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But the other thing that changed was definitely travel and tourism had changed. It's changed immensely over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And it changes every year. There's never one year that's exactly like the other year.
Yeah.
And the way people, and now after COVID,
oh gosh,
you're dealing with travel now, and you know what it's like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, everything has to be.
And it's changed so much, Donna. Like even that has changed so much in the past couple of years. I say it all the time on the podcast. I talk about it with my clients. There is really no down season anymore. There's no low season. There can be like a lower season, but it's gotten shorter and shorter. And then yesterday or today, I see an article in, I can't remember what publication, but whether it was the New York Times or whatever I read on my, feed every morning. Oh, this is the perfect time to travel to Europe. And I wanted to be like, no, please, no. This is when we finally have a little bit of, peace.
We can travel the roads. We don't have to worry about when the autostrada is going to be blocked.
And it was making it sound so irresistible too, like cooler weather, lower airfare. And I'm like, stop.
Not yet.
Yeah,
cooler
exactly.
Weather, not yet.
We're still hot. Sorry. So continue with, then what happened? So you part ways with the travel venture thing.
But I still stay in computers.
Okay.
So I go more towards e-commerce. So what's happening is, and I always think of my life progression as this, is like every step forward is like a stepping stone to get me to the next traguardo, the next plateau.
Right.
So then I went to e-commerce, and then I went to another kind of work, and then another, but always within the internet digital. So I was learning different ways. I was learning different ways to present products. Then I went and worked for a while with discovertuscany.com, which is a travel site, very, very popular travel site.
Excellent. Yeah.
And I worked with them, and I wrote a lot of articles for them. So now I started traveling. I knew places that a lot of Tuscans looked at me like, where's that?
Mm-hmm.
You must be mistaken.
Yeah, I know.
I was like, no, it's really there. It exists. It's
exists.
A thing. It's a thing. And I would do a lot of articles, and I'd start answering forum questions. So I really got onto the other side of digital. So part of digital is making sure you're seen, and part of digital is creating content.
Yeah. And
then I stopped working with them, and I just went freelance. So now what I do is I help people with their digital presence.
That's right.
And I like to work with foreigners that are here. Though I work with Italians as well, but I prefer to work with foreigners who are here because because I prefer to work in English. I mean, I speak fluent Italian, but I prefer to work in English.
Yeah.
But I also understood, or it seemed like my calling was helping foreigners integrate into the Italian structure. So part of being here is working with Italians, but how to present yourself on the internet for the foreign market, which I never lost contact with the foreign market.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an in-between. And I usually find myself working with women.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Female business owners who have come here thinking that it was all going to be so easy.
I never thought that though.
No, but you've been here for forever.
Exactly, because I'm an insider.
Yes, you
and
are.
I know. I've done my time. Yes.
But a lot of people say, oh, I want to go to Italy. I want to go to Tuscany. I want to live there. And then they get here and they're like, oh.
I didn't realize it was going to be so hard.
Yeah, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that. And I will tell you, yes, it is. But a lot of times I was, like I said before, I was oblivious. So things went over my head, like, the nepotism. or having to know someone to know someone to know someone.
Yeah.
That just went over my head. And I just trudged along anyway, and I did it, and I did it. And I think just the pure positive energy of I'm going to get this done.
Yeah.
Little engine, I think I can, I think I can, I think you can. And I did it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people get stopped.
Yeah.
And they got back down. And then you probably see this all the time. Then they start comparing things here to there.
Which is incredibly, first of all, it's useless. And it's just very dangerous territory because it's just apples and oranges.
Exactly, because they don't care here how it was there.
Exactly.
Only you care about that.
Exactly.
And you complaining isn't going to change it. And besides that, you chose to be here, so
suck it up. That's right. I'm sorry. I asked myself, no, seriously, I recently, I don't remember who I was talking to, but sort of the depictions that you find on social media today of all these, people living the life in Tuscany. And I don't know how the hell they're financing this existence. I mean, no, I know that there are a lot of digital, I know that a lot of people are just content creators.
Yes. But and you do have to be careful of people that just create content to, and there's a lot of talk now about, people who do that because they're idolizing their lives or creating an image. And creating an image is important, but that's not what I do. Yes, we create an image, but I like it to be as realistic as possible.
Exactly.
Of course, I'm not creating an image about what it means to live here. I'm helping people create an image about what it's like to have a wedding here. Or to sell art here. Or sell travel services here.
Or, do whatever your clients do.
Exactly.
So you've been on your own now for a while.
Yeah.
How's that?
So anytime you work on your own, I think there's always ups and downs because you are responsible for getting your own clients. I think you know something about that.
Yeah. Just
so there's always that not indecision, but there's always that uncertainty that you go into, and I'll talk to friends in the States, and they're like, "Oh, wow, that brings in a lot of money here in the States." I was like, "Yes, if I was working in the States, it could bring in a lot of money." But I'm not. I'm working in one of the countries that has one of the lowest paid job averages ever. Yeah. So, it gets me by. I get to do what I want to do when I want to do it. But I'm not going to say that I'm definitely not buying that $1.2 million home and refurnishing it.
Right.
Yet. But we'll work on that. There's a lot of things that you have to learn on your own.
Yeah.
Like doing your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember the first time I thought I could do my own taxes here in Italy. And that was 33 years ago when I first had to do taxes.
Donna.
And I just told my ex, I said, just bring me home the forms and the instructions. Well, the forms were like 55,000 pages. And it was 4 volumes of instructions. Yeah. I was like,
Donna, nobody does their taxes in Italy. I wrote a blog. I wrote a blog about this.
I know, I read it. And I laughed the whole time I read it because I was like, I know.
Not even accountants do their own taxes. They have accountants to do their taxes.
That was one of my first bureaucratic experiences.
One of those, those are really eye-opening.
And I'm an American. I can do this. I can do my own taxes.
No.
I can't even do my own American taxes now because I sat down to do them last year. And the year before, I squeaked by.
Okay.
But then this year they started talking about this form to that form, and then this form goes into that form, and then fold it to the right and slip it under, and then open it again in a full moon.
It's a little more. It's getting more rigid.
It's getting more confusing, and it's I don't make enough money to stress over this.
Trust me, U.S. IRS. Hello, we're really just getting by here.
But at the end, it's one of the few fixed expenses that, like car insurance, are one of the few fixed expenses that I really have that I can't opt out of.
Me too. There are certain things, I think, as a freelance professional here, there are certain things that you can do without, but you cannot do without a good commercialista.
No.
That is my first piece of advice to anyone.
Yes.
You need a commercialista.
And so many people, the thing is also to find a commercialista that can deal with you and your international situation.
Clientele, that's what, we have particular situations, but there are thankfully still enough commercialisti that you can find thankfully, because they saved the day. I mean, I can't deal with
We-
I can't
I,
deal
don't,
with that
I think
stuff.
Americans underestimate the bureaucracy that's here. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't, and I get it. I understand why it's here, and
Yeah.
it's part of Italy. It's part of the charm of Italy, but you can't afford. Even between the commercialist and all the technical people out there, my present boyfriend cuts wood. So he buys a plot, he rents a plot of land, and he goes in and cuts wood.
Okay.
So technically, you can only cut on that land there.
Right.
So before he goes in to cut, he marks the trees that he's going to cut. The forest rangers come, they approve the trees.
Okay.
He cuts them down.
Yeah.
And then another man comes in and tells him, you didn't cut in the borders.
Oh.
And you're like, I already had a technical man come in from your
enough.
department.
Donna, it's not enough.
And that's what it is. You do so much here in Italy, and technically you think you're on track. But then once you've answered 2 questions, then there's another guy that comes in, or lady, and says, no, you need to go to that department over there.
Right.
So this is part of the bureaucracy that I try to avoid, and you can only avoid that if you have a good technical person, like a commercialista or a legale.
Yeah, exactly. And you're still going to encounter that. And I think it's funny because I also get a lot of very innocent questions from clients. You know, I do relocation services and things like that. And when I tell people the reality, like one of the most common questions I get, this is totally off topic, but just thinking of sort of Americans who really don't have a sense of what life looks like here. But, you know, people saying like, I want to homeschool my kids. And I'm like, people do that, but it's really like culturally, it's so not, it's so strange, right? And then I think about the bureaucracy. If you want to homeschool your kid here, you have to jump through so many hoops. Like it's I don't know if you've ever looked into it, but you can do it.
You know what?
But it's crazy.
You know what I did look into, and here's like the cultural thing again: private schools.
Oh yeah.
So Americans think of private school as being the thing. You know, if you can go into a private school. Italians think of private schools as correctional schools.
Yeah, or somewhere you go if you have
problems.
And which is, I think it's changing a little, but when we first moved here, for sure, people were like, private school.
Why?
No.
Why are you going
to?
Like, what's wrong with you?
Well, because the public system is so rigid, especially like at the high school and middle school levels. It's like, you know, people would think that you would have failed out of public school if you're going to private school. It's a little different now. But
I remember. I mean,
but it was very much like that at the time.
Yes, of course. There's international schools, which is a little different. But if you were going to go to an Italian private school, it was definitely not looked upon in the same buon occhio as
private schools in the U.S.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is a whole cultural thing. So you come in here thinking I'm going to do that, and just like homeschool, lots of Americans think homeschool, but. I don't know anyone in Italy who homeschools.
No, I don't either.
Anyone at all.
No. And I mean, there are people who talk about it, and I get questions about it. And
I bet they're all connected some way in international aspect.
I don't know, but I strongly advise against it because I think that the best thing about living here is the culture, the people, you know, just and school. I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, I love being a mom, but man, if I had to be teaching my child every day and do it, no, it's not going to happen. We would kill each other. We would kill each other. Exactly. And then I have to find a way to get it somehow recognized by the Italian, you know, Ministry of Education. It's not going to be happening. So I want to get back to your business because I want to talk a little bit about how we met, because you were talking about your business and you were saying how you like working with foreign clients. You tend to work especially with women. And I don't know if you know this, but when I resigned from Stanford and I said, okay, I'm going to start my own business in this like very woohoo American gung-ho way. I knew it was a move I had been contemplating for a while. And so I knew that even though I'm older, I knew I needed a social media manager, right? So I had reached out to someone who had been recommended to me, and she just was not responsive. You know, like you know me. And now you know me, but I don't know. I didn't know much about social media then. I know a lot more now, but I did know that there was no way I could work with someone who left my text message, as my daughter would say, read but didn't reply, which is basically like the worst thing you can do, right?
Like I see you, but I don't care.
Visualizzato, ma non risposto, okay? So I reach out, as I often do. There are these wonderful groups online, and one of them is on Facebook. It's a Florence Moms for Moms group.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of the women there, both personally and also just kind of know them by name. And I say, hey, ladies, I'm quitting my job and I'm going out on my own. I need a social media manager. Literally 6 people who I really know and trust within 5 minutes said, hands down, Donna, you've got to contact Donna. Donna. I'm like,
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, ladies.
And I'm like, who is this Donna? And why have I never heard of her? Right?
Which is not a good advertisement for my work.
No, it's because I was working. Well, no,
because
it is because I was living in my little universe.
Mm-hmm.
The way for you, Poppy was Italy, right?
Yeah.
I had been in
Stanford.
Stanford was my life, guys. Everyone out there, Stanford was my life. I was raising a kid. I was a single mom. It was a high pressure job.
You were living in Florence.
Well, the way I knew people was because
of the group.
Because we were just moms asking moms questions.
I have to say that the groups have definitely been great for me because of the passaparola, referrals.
Exactly.
And I always, all my clients, I make sure they understand, don't ditch these groups because these groups are good for your business.
Fundamental. And so I'm very active on the groups but very appreciative as well. And I don't remember too much about our first meeting, but all I remember is that at a certain point, like you put so much pressure on me in the best way. Okay. So I remember one of our conversations where you said something to me like, I'm your biggest cheerleader. I'll be your when you're down, I'll, lift you up and I'll help you and I'll do all this stuff. And, I have to say that it's really been like that, and this sort of evolution, right? So going out on your own after having worked for somebody for so many years was really hard for me. And I needed somebody to help me. Like I still don't. I still need you so much. No, but I was clueless.
Well, one of the things I realized is part of it was my experience. So I knew what I would have liked to have had when I was going out. But I also realized that and you say social media, but it's really not social media. It's a digital presence.
Exactly.
And so many people will tell me, yeah, but I don't need a digital presence. And I respond to them, you might not want it. You might not think you need it, but you already have it.
Yeah.
Whether you act on it or not, everyone has a digital presence. The difference is if you curate it, like you're doing, or if you just leave it wallow.
Yeah.
And, so many people, I don't really need it. I actually talked to someone the other day in an accounting firm, stateside.
Yeah.
This is stateside, where they should know better. And the person said, I just don't understand why I need a website. I was like, okay, so you work in 50 states. You have 100 and some offices. You have more than 2,000 people that work for you. And you don't think you need a website. I was like, you have to explain that to me. You have to explain me the mentality. So what I try to do is I try to explain to people why they need a digital presence.
Yeah.
And then I realized that most of the people I'm working with the age and the experience that they have, and unfortunately age is important because you and I can both remember a time when there was no cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
So we're a different age group and we have a different mentality.
Yeah.
And some people embrace it faster than others. This is true. But they also need to be encouraged. Yeah. They need to be encouraged to do the learning curve.
Exactly.
And that's why I say, yes, I will be your cheerleader. I will be there to make sure that you don't get down and depressed when you're not getting the followers that you want or you're not seeing people read the articles that you write because I know that it's a process.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you recognize that.
Oh my God, I appreciate you so much. I think I'm one of those people. I'm pretty technological too.
You are. You definitely are one of the more savvy.
I love technology. I always embrace it. I'm pretty.
You do.
I'm good about that. But I often say I'm kind of clueless sometimes just about like life in general. I studied literature. I live. Fundamentally, I'm a writer. I love podcasting. The business stuff is really beyond me. But what you've done is you've given me this really you've given me tools, and you've helped me grow. And I love that as someone who just kind of loves to learn in general, but I think about things differently now. So when I do a post, it's you've taught me to look really like beyond what I'm posting. So it's not just the words or just the image or a hashtag or whether that's even necessary anymore, because you teach me things like that too. But you push me and you hold me accountable. And I love that. And so I'm always thinking about my next move, but also you really pushed me very gently to do all these things that I never would have done, Donna. Like I never would have.
You're doing great at what you're doing. I think you're excelling.
It's Donna's fault that I don't know, we can thank Donna or we can say thanks for nothing, Donna. But it was her idea for me to do the podcast.
Which you have embraced and you are going. Yeah, and I think you excel at it. I think you've got the right personality. And it's come out later. And one of the things that has happened while we've been working together is watching your business transform. Whereas you thought, and so many people do that, when they come over stateside from here, they think they're going to do one thing, and then when they get here, they realize that the void that they're going to fill is another.
Exactly.
And you were already here, and you thought that this was the void, but
you're finding it's totally different.
It's become another thing totally, but that's part of the growing process,
right?
And it's also not being rigid. Whereas, no, I have to do this.
No, I'm not like that. You know that.
No,
and I've said yes to I think just about everything you've proposed to me. Like podcast, yes, blog, yes. I love my website
and newsletter.
My newsletter. Look out! Also, there's going to be big changes coming on the website soon, and Donna also got me involved in something that I can't really talk about yet. But thanks to Donna, I also did. One of the most incredible things I've ever done in my life. And it pushed me way out of my comfort zone, but we'll talk about that on a future podcast episode. But I want to know, I've been reflecting over the summer, really, because it's been a year, a little over a year.
A little over a year.
And thinking about all the twists and turns that the business has taken, but also really the kind of confidence I've gained thanks to the way we work together. You know what I mean? Like you're always there and I'm like, Donna, I don't want to do, and I always, I did this complaining text, like, Donna, I'm doing too much. I'm tired, and you're like, come on, you can just more little.
You've embraced it. I mean, you started out where I had to help you with the blogs, and now you do them on your own, that you're doing your newsletters on your own. So you definitely, I like it when I can teach people how to do things on their own. I mean, it makes me obsolete after a little bit, unless it's just for counseling purposes. But I do like to see the people that I work with gain the skills that make them proactive in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because a digital presence, I can assist people with their digital presence, but I'm definitely one that doesn't think I should be doing it 100% for them.
Yeah.
Because your digital presence, your social presence, you're being social, should be you coming out. And the less it's you coming out and the more that it's just marketing, the less business savvy you are.
And that's what you've said from the beginning, which it was hard for me to embrace, like really hard. You're like, show yourself more, get yourself out there, put, pictures and your people want to see you with Frankie, my dog. And, which
we haven't seen yet, but he's adorable.
But he'll be there. But at some point he's coming. But, really thinking about things in a different way. Like it's very hard. It was very hard for me to put myself out there at age 52.
Whatever.
No, it's fine. I'm very proud of my age. But you really took me by the hand and you gave me all of these tools that I just really didn't have. And so I think about them really, it's not just hyperbole. Every time I sit down and I do a post on LinkedIn, wherever, it doesn't matter. I'm thinking about what message, who's going to read it? What message am I sending? Why am I doing this?
Exactly.
And those are questions that, it's not like, well, I didn't need to ask myself before, but also like, how is a potential client receiving this? I didn't know to ask myself. Yeah. So what kind of message am I really sending here? What are people thinking when they read my newsletter? Am I coming across as genuine?
Exactly.
As who I really am? And I think I am, but I think I am thanks to you.
Well, because I reminded you, but I think you're a genuine person anyway. It's just that so many people think, oh, it's a business. I need to be professional.
Right.
No, not yes, you
Yes.
do, but you also need to be authentic.
Right.
You need that authentic voice.
Right.
And many people are, I'll just pay a company to do it. And a company will do it, and they do good work. I'm not saying that you
Sure.
shouldn't have someone out there helping you with it, but remember that you should always be putting your personal, because that's what's going to distinguish you
Right.
from everybody else.
And that's what you've always been saying. You always have these pearls of wisdom, right? When I'm like at my...
almost fine, right?
No, when I'm at the bottom of the barrel, like literally when I'm so down, and I'll be like, Donna, and you'll just come up with some pearl of wisdom and it'll get me through. So we are coming to the end of our conversation. We've already been talking for almost an hour now, Donna. What a surprise.
And this is without a Prosecco or chips between
which you
us.
usually have, obviously. So I want to ask you, though, what's in store for this coming year? Do you have any exciting news, any plans, anything on the horizon that you want to share with us, or even just advice for those who are here in Italy trying to, have a digital presence?
So, upcoming things is difficult to say because I have definitely gone to a phase where whatever happens, happens. I'm actually enjoying like a semi-retirement but working full-time kind
You're
of life.
too young for that.
No, but I'm enjoying having the flexibility and the time. I
Yeah,
definitely am.
yeah.
I can enjoy
I hear you.
grandkids,
I hear
my
you on
boyfriend.
that.
I
Yeah.
can enjoy traveling quite a bit, which
Yeah.
I like doing. I can enjoy friends and coming into Florence more often. So
Being a part of WIN, which we haven't talked about, but I've talked
yes,
about it in prior
Women's
podcasts.
International Network has
You
definitely
also
made...
hooked me into that as well. You're like, oh, you should join WIN.
No, there's so many
Yeah.
there's so many things out there that having the freelance work definitely makes it
easier to do. Yeah.
easier to do. But if I was going to, I don't want to say give advice because things change so frequently, but I would definitely insist that if anyone wants to be here and have a presence here, that you need to think of your digital presence. And even if you are stateside and not coming here, you still need to think of your digital presence, because even if you don't think you have one, and it should be cared for. Because unfortunately, privacy policies and hackers will make sure that it's tampered with in one way, shape, or form. So the best you can do is to set yourself up to protect yourself as much as possible.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that you can do on your own that you should be doing on your own. So obviously, if anyone wants to talk about it, they can contact me.
I was just going to say, we'll put Donna's contact information,
Definitely.
obviously, in the description for the episode. If you're looking to up your game, I highly recommend her. But
Thank
seriously, I have to say that I get a lot of compliments on the website, on the aesthetics of everything we put out.
But a lot of that was you.
Well,
I like to let people go with it. Sometimes people don't have any sense of. I always say I have no aesthetic sense.
No, but you read people. First of all, you do, because you do. But you read people very well, because I don't feel like I did any of that. I don't know.
But you did.
Right. But you know
But
what
maybe
I'm saying?
it was painless. Maybe that's what you're trying to say.
For sure. No, working with Donna is definitely painless. No, but also, again, it's going back to that, like, I didn't realize what I was doing. And I think the first few months, especially of the business, is just a whole blur to me right now, because I was like, okay. And now, that I can really see, how things have evolved, how things are going, the direction.
I think that your learning curve helps you help your clients.
Yeah.
Because you've seen how you started in one direction and how easy it is to pivot.
Yeah.
And go in another direction. And part of women, I think, also have this, I can't pivot, it's a failure. Yeah. No, pivot should never be seen as, I can't, from the day I left the shores of the States to here, I can't tell you how many times I had to pivot.
I had
to. Pivot.
I know, but I had no idea. I'm just learning this today. It's such a fascinating story.
But you have to be ready. I think anybody who comes here who says, I'm going to make a life here, you have to be ready to pivot.
That's such a good piece of advice.
Yeah. And you, in the work that you've done, I've seen how you can help people pivot or help them find answers for the pivotal moment.
Exactly.
They
literally.
have.
Yeah.
Because if there's anything in Italy that we've learned, is that as much as in the States you can do it on your own, Italy you can't.
Yeah, you really need help.
And it's not trying to sell someone's services. This is life. This is the insider's view.
This is the reality coming from two, people who have been living like insiders for a long time.
Yeah.
Yet you need someone who's going to do your taxes, and you need someone who's going to help you with your digital presence.
Thank
so
you.
On that, no, seriously. And I'm really grateful to you, and I'm really glad that we had this conversation today.
Me too. And I wish you the best of luck for all your future podcasts, which I'm sure there's going to be tons of.
Thank you. Grazie mille e alla prossima volta.